The Supreme Court could rule on President Biden's student loan forgiveness program as early as this week. His proposal would provide up to $20,000 in debt relief for more than 40 million Americans with federal student loans. This as a group of Senate Republicans have outlined their plan to combat student debt, including bills that would change the way potential students understand the cost of college. Let's bring in senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer, senior national policy reporter Ann Flaherty, and business reporter Alexis Christoforous for more on this. Devin, where does this case stand going into the ruling?
Well, the case could be decided as soon as tomorrow, Diane. This was argued late last year. This is the case challenging President Biden's student debt forgiveness plan that was enacted almost a year ago in August 2022. As you said, 16 million Americans signed up by the time it was frozen by the courts. 16 million had been approved already for relief. 26 million had signed up. 40 million, as you mentioned, eligible. So we're talking a big universe of students here. But the justices during those oral arguments seemed likely that they will strike this down when they decide. Anything can happen, of course, but there was a lot of skepticism about the power of the education secretary to simply waive the debts of millions of Americans because of the COVID-19 emergency, which is what the government claimed. Clarence Thomas at that time said it sure sounded like a grant, a big giveaway, if you will, of $400 billion that didn't have the approval of Congress, which has the power of the purse. So that's what everyone is expecting. If that happens, despite the administration's very strong counter-arguments here, Diane, it would be a huge blow to the administration, also the millions of students who we should remember have been, not having to repay their federal student loans for the last 3 years. And the administration just announced yesterday, I think, that those will now begin in October. So a lot on the line if this is struck down and those payments do restart.
Now, Ann, if the Supreme Court strikes down the program, what other options does the president have for student debt relief?
Well, Diane, the White House has absolutely refused to talk about any kind of plan B in this issue. They say that they are focusing on winning this legal case, and they believe that they can. Of course, advocates say that they need to come up with a plan B because they're not so sure. And they say that, look, the Education Department has turned itself into a major bank. 44 million Americans owe $1.6 trillion. And they can set the terms for that. That's the argument that we're hearing from people that oppose resuming payments on these student loan debt. Now, the question, though, is that this debt ceiling bill that was just passed by Congress, they said that the administration has no choice. They have to resume those payments. The question, though, is whether or not the administration will look at, tweaking those terms, looking at enforcement, anything that they can do to try to ease the burden, because they know that this is a politically popular issue, Diane.
So what about the students trying to avoid debt in the first place? And is the Biden administration doing anything to try to combat rising costs?
Yeah, this is absolutely at the heart of the issue, and I don't think that we're focusing on it enough. We keep talking about keeping people out of debt, or helping people once they're in debt instead of keeping people out of debt in the first place. There's just not a lot of agreement within Congress to try to tackle this kind of issue. You have Republicans that want to pull back entirely from the student loan program, but we do know that students are going to earn about $1 million more over an entire lifetime if they go to college. So you still have students that want to do it and have the ability to do it. So we've talked with the administration on this. They say that they are working on options, lowering payments, for example, but there's just not a lot of agreement in Congress to try to go after colleges to bring down those prices.
So, Alexis, what does this mean for the average borrower who qualified for this debt relief?
I'm glad that you said qualified, because not everybody is going to qualify for this. It only applies if you took out a federal student loan. If you have a personal or private student loan to help through college, that does not apply here. And it's also, if you have more than $20,000 in federal student loans, anything beyond that you would still owe, because if the Supreme Court signs off on this, it would wipe out $20,000 in debt, but nothing beyond that. So all those things are important to keep in mind. What you want to know is that as of September 1, interest will start accruing on those federal loans with payment due at some point in October. We don't have a hard date just yet. But what you want to start doing now is pretending like you owe that money. Put that money aside, because for lots of folks, it's going to be a jolt to their financial financial system. They haven't had to make these payments now in over 3 years, and for some people, not at all, because they're freshly graduated. Things you want to do is contact your student loan servicer, the company that manages your student loan. They may have changed over the past few years. You can log on to studentaid.gov to find out who that is. Make sure your contact information is up to date with them, and ask them when they expect you to resume payments, and talk to them about payment plans. There's something called an income-driven payment plan right now that is based on your income and also your family size, and that can help you with budgeting to pay back those student loans.
And Devin, what more are you learning about this GOP proposal?
Yeah, a Republican proposal floated by Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. He's the top Republican on the Senate Education Committee, Diane, and this is sort of coming out now as these headlines are going to start about those loan repayments that Alexis was talking about. The Republican proposal is very modest. It keeps the responsibility on the students for knowing what they're getting into when you sign up for debt. So this is not looking back at those with debt. It's more looking forward in the next few years as you sign up for debt to go to college. What would it do? The Republican proposal would increase transparency, requiring schools to be more upfront about how repayments would be made, how much would be owed. Also, they're hoping to do some downward pressure by capping the amount of graduate student loans that can be taken out. So modest things, don't have a lot of Democratic support, but Republicans looking to show that they're involved in this issue as well. Diane?
And Ann, in an interview with ABC News, Education Secretary Miguel Cardona said the current loan program isn't working as intended. What does he mean by that, and what's the solution?
Well, we know, Diane, that a lot of kids aren't able to access college simply because of the cost. So, there are certainly programs out there, scholarships, merit-based programs, but they're very limited in scope. So what he wants to do is try to expand those options for kids. He told us that he still sees college degrees as the great equalizer. Diane?
All right. And Alexis, student loan payments, they're set to restart in October after this 3-year pause due to the pandemic. So what do people need to know about that?
Well, you should start, like we said earlier, start pretending like those payments are due now. Start setting that money aside. You can put it in maybe a high-yield savings account to make a little money on your money while you wait for those programs to, bills to come in once again. Something else that you can do is, if you were in default with your student loan before that freeze 3 years ago, the government has now something called a Fresh Start program. You can go online to find out more about that. That will help you, in essence, write what it's called, right? Get a fresh start with your loans.
So, Devin, what happens next?
Wait and see, Diane. We'll see what the Supreme Court does tomorrow. 2 more weeks left in the term for this decision to come down. And I'm just going to say we could be surprised. We were surprised last week with that major voting rights case. So who knows what they'll do, even though the expectation is that the Biden student debt forgiveness plan will go down at the court, Diane.
All right, Devin Dwyer and Flaherty, Alexis Christoforous, thank you all.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.